Hey, and thanks for joining me on this edition of the podcast. I'm your host, Jason Brown, the co founder of SERPWoo and inventor of SERP tracking. And in today's episode, I want to go over real quick the three top tips I have for your pay per click optimization. So I know this is a little bit of a departure from SEO, and I am doing an experiment here. I'll tell you the results of the experiment if it works out. But essentially, tip number one for pay per click, and this applies to any platform, is be sure to check your geolocations. This is going to be especially true for Google Ads, but it can work out in other pay per click platforms. That if you have more than one option, meaning more than an option to include, specifically if you have the option to exclude, so typically on a lot of pay-per-click platforms, you can include areas and exclude. Some of them just have only the option to include. On Google Ads specifically, you can include and exclude. And the tip is this: if you include, make sure you exclude. So you might include the United States because that's where you ship or that's where you want to advertise to. You can actually still get traffic from India, Philippines, the United Kingdom, from any other country. It really depends on the options that you select and what you're including, what you're excluding. So my number one tip for geolocations is make sure that if you include, you also exclude. Very important tip for Google Ads. I've seen thousands of accounts do this wrong, waste all kinds of money. People thinking that because they selected to include the United States, that that's the only traffic that they were getting, and it's just not true. So make sure that if you include, you also exclude if possible. Now, my number two tip is when you're looking to optimize, tweak, to cut or add, that you look at multiple time frames. There's so many times I'm looking over somebody's shoulder and they're, maybe doing optimizations every Friday and they look at the last 7 days. They do certain optimizations like keywords or looking at ads. They look at it on a Friday. They only look at the last 7 days. Now, here's why this is important. Sometimes you're going to run into platforms that have a delayed conversion. Maybe it takes 15 days for Google Ads to recognize that conversion. And when Google Ads does recognize it, it's not going to recognize it on the day that Google Ads recognizes it. It recognizes it and attributes it to the day it actually happened. So some pay-per-click platforms, if somebody saw an ad and clicked it 3 weeks ago and then purchased today, you would notice the revenue show up in that pay-per-click platform for today. Google Ads, however, can be set up to where if somebody saw an ad and clicked it 3 weeks ago and purchased today, it actually attributes that revenue to 3 weeks ago, the date that the click happened. And if you're looking at the last 7 days, or if you're just looking at one specific time frame, you may miss that. Also, part B of this is that when you're looking at multiple time frames, you got to count seasonality. You've got to count other changes that happened on the website, maybe changes that happen on that ad platform. So whenever I do optimizations like keywords, ads, any kind of optimization at all, like if I'm removing cities and states and looking for poor performers, I always look at it as what happened the last 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 90 days, and last 6 months. And I'm taking an evaluation of if that's changed over time. I give more importance to relevancy. So if something wasn't too hot for 6 months ago, maybe it's doing better now. And that could be seasonality, but it could be changes on your website or algorithm changes or tweaks that you've made in the past 6 months that are building up and adding up. You always want to look at multiple time frames for any selection or any optimization that you do. And my third tip is don't do too much too soon. Now, nobody's ever taught me that phrase. It's just one I've kind of came up with on my own over the years. You don't want to do too much too soon. Basically, you're in the account all the time fiddling with it. Now, I have nothing against you going into your account and making changes and tweaks and optimizations, But if you're going in doing too much too soon, say you're rearranging campaigns and keywords and splitting out campaigns into low ROAS and high ROAS, or by intent or by device, and then the next day you're going in and removing geolocations, and then the next day after that you're going in and changing ads and adding in new ads, and there are a lot of ads, and you're cutting old ads, and you're doing a lot of that. That's too much. You're doing too much too soon within that 3-day time period. So what ends up happening is, if everything works out, 7 months from, 7 days from now or 14 days from now, you look at it and things have improved. That's great. But do you know why it improved? Again, you did too much too soon. More than likely, what happens is 14 days from now, you notice that there's a drop in ROAS, or the performance takes a hit, maybe traffic stops, and you really don't understand why that happened to go back and reverse it. Because again, you did too much too soon. Was it the removal of the geolocations? Was it the new ads that you put in? Was it the campaign splitting? Was it certain keywords that you took out? You really don't know, because you don't have a baseline for what happened, and it's too much too soon. You don't want to do that. You really want to take your time with pay per click and let these changes kind of play out with several days between major changes. Usually, I like to look at things and say, hey, I'm going to make this change. I note it. I let a few days go by, make sure things are good, and then I make my next major change. So that's it for right now. If you like this video, please comment, like, share, subscribe. The more that you engage with this channel, the more I know what type of content that you'd like to see, and it does help us with the algorithm. So I'll catch you on the next podcast, and I'll see you later. Thanks. Bye bye.